Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Parenting has always been tough. Today, being a parent means worrying about ungodly influence at school, in the media, bullying, and the near constant pressure to give in to values that are antithetical to how we want to raise our children. If our children are like little sponges for all the right things, they're also sponges for all the wrong things too. But parents know they can't follow their children around and try to protect them. Our next guest says parenting by faith means bringing our fears to Jesus with the knowledge that His power is at work in impossible situations. Going to Jesus in our fear without fear is always the right thing to do. Faith triumphs over fear. In her new book, Parenting by Faith, What Jesus Said to Parents, Patricia Batten takes a look at the various interactions Jesus had with parents and extracts conclusions about how He felt towards hurting parents. Our next guest, Patricia Batten, doctor in ministry, teaches soon-to-be pastors how to preach expository sermons in her role as ranked adjunct assistant professor of preaching at Gordon Conwell. She also serves as the assistant director for Haddon W. Robinson's Center for Preaching. She is also the author of Models for Biblical Preaching. Here to talk about her new book, Parenting by Faith, What Jesus Said to Parents, is Patricia Batten. Pat, welcome in to this edition of Revealing the Truth.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. What an important subject. When we take a look at good parenting and parenting by faith, it usually comes out of a model either of what we didn't get and we're going to be everything completely different than the way we were raised, or we had a key influencer that helped model our desire to parent like that and to carry on a legacy and a journey into our faith becoming our own. Who was that in your life, and what was that like for you?
Oh, well, my mom was a great parent, and she really loved us. She was not a perfect mom, but she loved us. I have two sisters, and she still loves us. So yeah, I'd have to say my mom. As I've grown older, and now that I have kids of my own, I look around at some different people and see how they are raising their kids, and what their kids are like, how they discipline, that kind of thing. In some ways, I sort of cherry pick. Oh, I like that. I don't care for that. But my mom really was a good mom.
So, Mom took you to church?
Oh, she sure did. Yes. Every Sunday. We memorized our Bible verses in the car, but yes, she took us to church every Sunday.
And what was it that made your faith your own? What was the break point where for adolescents, it's Mom's faith, and
Yeah.
I'm just along for the ride, and if you were to ask me at 3 or 4 years old, Jesus loves me, this I know, that's because that's what the Bible tells me, and my mother tells me, and everybody around tells me, so yeah, I must be a believer, but that's not really the case.
No, that's not the case, and it's something that grows throughout the years. When I was in third grade at the little church we attended, I distinctly remember this. My Sunday school teacher was named Mrs. Beebe, and we were downstairs. They had the metal folding chairs, and I remember how cold they were on my little body. And we used a felt board. She had the felt board. She had a picture up there of the disciples and Jesus with the children. And I remember her asking, would anybody like to ask Jesus into their heart? And, my mom had talked about this, but for some reason, I'm 8 years old, it stuck. And I raised my hand. And that was the first time, I only had a third grade understanding of this, but I really did. I wanted God to be a part of my life. Now, that grew over time. And there were definitely times when I didn't want him to be part of my life, but it grew. And then it probably wasn't until college that I really made a leap and really made it my own. I think I saw just the world around me and what was going on. And I think I was a little nervous. I was scared, and I really thought, Lord, I have to make a decision now. I can't live in both worlds here. And yeah, God grabbed hold of my heart. So yeah, college. But something happened in third grade where I really do think God sent His Spirit and watched over me, protected me, and worked in my life.
So you went on to college. Did you go to college with the intention of a life in the ministry?
No, not at all. I mean, I had never seen a female minister. That just was not part of my experience. So I was part of InterVarsity, that kind of thing. And then after college, I went to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, and there I still thought, I want to work with college students, maybe high school students. And again, God was working in my heart, and my husband and I, we ended up in a little Baptist church in Kennebunkport, Maine.
A very famous town.
Yes.
For the Bush family.
Yeah.
Did they attend that church? Or
They did not attend that church, but Barbara did write me a letter once.
was it a letter of correction or encouragement?
It was a letter of encouragement.
Oh, good.
They went to the Congregational church down the street.
Good. So your husband pastors.
He doesn't actually. I know I said we, but he is. There's only one of us in professional ministry, but we do everything together. I mean, we go into a church. He's working with the kids or adult Sunday school or whatever needs to be done. I mean, it is a family affair.
Mm-hmm.
When you minister. It really is. Everybody's involved. The kids, even my mom and my dad, everybody is part of it.
So are you actually the one doing the preaching on Sunday?
Yes, not now. After I had kids, my first child, I left. But yes, at that time, I was the one who preached Sunday to Sunday.
So in your exegetical training, in your hermeneutics and homiletics, and your study of the Greek and the New Testament model, how much of the Old Testament, and I'll preface this by saying everything that you read about what Jesus said to parents was in a Jewish setting and in a Jewish context. And therefore, these are the foundational Jewish teachings of parenting in the Jewish home, even as it exists today. Right. Not modeled after Jesus. Jesus was a product of a Jewish home and a product of a Jewish environment of putting value in certain places. And so it's, for many, they kind of look at me and go, what did you just say? And what are you trying to tell me? What I'm trying to tell you is that this book has not been added to in 2,000 years. This is first century Judaism. This is not first century Christianity.
Right.
This is the story of the seed line of Genesis 3:15 coming into this world and fulfilling the prophecies, and will return, but the story's been written, it has not been fulfilled. And so there was no New Testament at the time of Jesus. Therefore, these foundational truths are almost 5,000 years old. They're not 2,000 years old.
Right.
And they're reflective of a whole thought pattern that just because it was written in Greek is not an expression of Greek thought. And so sometimes there's ministers and I've had presidents of seminaries that kind of just sit in their chair and say, you know, I've never thought about that before. I never put it in that perspective before. And, you know, I'm a little stunned by what you're saying, but it has been the foundation of our teaching rabbinically for thousands upon thousands of years, and we see it reflected in these narratives. There's great blessing because, as God in Ephesians 2 takes the two, because there's only two people groups in the Bible. There's only Jews and Gentiles. There is nothing else. There is no race. There is there's nothing. There's Jews and Gentiles. That's all there is. And he brings us together as one. And there's such brilliance in the harvest that he even says that he didn't come to abolish the law of the prophets. He came to fulfill them, and that until heaven and earth pass away, not the least stroke of this wisdom, of this great foundational teaching shall pass away. And that if anybody breaks it, and he's talking about the model of parenting, he's talking about the model of speaking to one another, the ministry of one another, kindness and goodness, and this life that we're to be living. So it's always interesting to see the context in which many of these messages are placed in, because they have such deep-seated, unshakable roots. I can't.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The writing of a book about parenting by faith, you were living a life of parenting by faith and facing the same challenges. Here you were with your doctorate, here you were preaching and teaching, but now you were coming across the real world and the battles, and it really is taking a leap of knowledge. And how do you apply that knowledge to the reality that the receiver doesn't have a clue?
Right.
You know, sometimes there's the very scholarly pastor that gets up there and he does a complete expository teaching on the Greek etymology of a particular concept. And after you've heard the third or fourth or fifth Greek word in a row, you just think, okay, I'm good with speaking in tongues, but like, bring me the interpretation swiftly, quickly, even now, because
right.
I can't go much further. That's what children are to us, that we speak a different language to them. So how do we approach this concept of parenting by faith, and how did Jesus interact with parents?
Yeah, it's not enough to look back and say, okay, this is what Jesus did when he met this mom or this dad. I mean, that's great. That's interesting, but it's not helpful. It has to be applied to our own lives and our own situations. And that's always the difficult part in preaching or in studying scripture. My mentor, Haddon Robinson, used to say that there was more heresy found in the application of looking at a passage than there was in the exegesis. Exegesis, we can, pretty much get it right. I mean, we may have some different views, that kind of thing. But applying it is really difficult, saying this is what it looks like in your life, and is that a thus saith the Lord? I mean, can application be thought of at that level? So application is tricky, but reading the Bible and studying the Bible is incomplete without it. So it's absolutely necessary. Leaving it back in the long ago and the far away is not what we're intended to do. We need to do that work. It's a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of study. But what does it mean today? Not what do I feel like it means or what do I think it means, but what does that look like in my life today? And that's the tricky part. There are some gray areas there. And, it may look one way for one parent, and, discipline may look like something else for another parent. So yeah, it's difficult, but what he said matters, and how we take that. I think we have to pray and ask the Spirit to guide us as well. It's not as black and white as we'd always like it to be.
I think one of the stunning parts of the narrative is we tend to forget that Jesus was parented.
Right.
He had a mother and father that were active and engaged in his Jewish upbringing, in
Yeah.
his identity. And we come across a situation that would be an Amber Alert.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have the Amber Alert. We have, in my day, it was a child's picture on a milk carton.
Yeah.
That was the Amber Alert of my generation. Missing child. His parents are 2 days' journey out of Jerusalem, and they go looking for him, and he's not to be found. And it's kind of the modern day tailgating. Yeah, he was riding with his buddies. He was riding with the friends. That he must be with them. And they came back and, of course, found him in the synagogue. And what would a modern parent do today if your kid was missing and you retraced the steps and found them 2 days later? Actually, they were 2 days' journey out. So now, by the time they get back, it's 4 days.
It's 4 days.
4 days
Yeah.
of missing. And he's approached by his parents, and his response, is this normal? Is this something that we would accept from our child today? Well, why are you bothered by this? I'm about my father's business. Can't you see we're having a discussion here?
Right.
What's the worry? What's the big deal?
Right. And that today, if your child said that, you'd think they were being very flip.
Very flip, very disrespectful, very out of line. So, where we take our parenting model from or our lessons from is as important as the application of those, exactly as you
Right.
said. That's where the heresy is in the application. Did they take him home and spank him? Did they
Right.
put him in timeout? Did they say,
Yeah.
okay, we're taking your Torah away from you. You can't read your Torah for 5 days. What
Right.
was the punishment of the day that was going to be effective for the young Messiah
Yeah.
coming into his fullness? There's no doubt that this generation is more technologically impacted. A survey of 10,000 age 10 to 21, excuse me, ages 10 to 21, 30% responded that they had no friends.
Yeah.
But they had Facebook interactions, and they had technology and gaming interactions, but they had no friends. That's
Right.
quite a stressful situation, because social interaction, all the things that we want our child to obtain, the ability to connect,
Yeah.
is being competed with an intangible.
Right.
How do you navigate that? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and the Bible does not talk about that. The Bible does not specifically mention technology or smartphones, anything like that. So there again, you've got to apply. But you think of Jesus, he had this group of disciples around him. I mean, they were his buddies. They were close. And yet kids don't have that. If they do, it's online. They connect online. And at some point, there is going to be a void, or when they become adults, something's going to be missing in the way that they interact. And God is a God of relationship. He is not a distant God. So I think as parents, just thinking wisely about that, and how do we foster relationships? I mean, real relationships. And how do we work to give our kids those meaningful interactions? But yeah, it is important. It's a very different world. It's a very, I'm speaking from Western culture, very, very different culture. But the changes now, I'm not even sure that we've seen the effects of this iPhone generation, and my kids are part of the smartphone generation.
Should we be looking at this stewardship model that God gives us, our children, for this period of 18 years? That we are that it's a stewardship model. It's not they're not ours. We didn't create them. We procreated them. We did not create them. God created them. And that we're looking at raising children, but is our perspective actually supposed to be broader than that? We are actually raising future mother and fathers, future husbands and wives. Should we, if we expanded and broaden the scope of who we're dealing with and what we're preparing them for, would we maybe take it more seriously and invest more into developing the skills that are going to equip them to be better mothers and fathers and better husbands and wives than just being a good child?
Yeah, I do think that perspective is very important for parents. We can get so stuck in the day to day. I mean, I just think of this morning, I dropped one son off for a 3-hour fishing camp, loves it, the other son for a tennis camp, and he completely flipped out. He wouldn't stay. He hated me. I mean, oh, it was terrible. And it consumed me all morning. And sometimes we just singly focus on today and these kids, and we've got to get them into the right clubs and activities. But the larger picture is absolutely crucial. We are borrowing these kids. They are not ours, and someday they will leave our homes, and they should. And that's what we're doing. We are raising, not little kids, but we are growing them into young men and young women. And I think when we do have that perspective, yeah, it changes how we look at everything, including technology. That these kids will be making contributions to our world and our society, to the kingdom. They'll be moms and dads and good neighbors. And what does that look like? We're almost just practice right here. And it's an important perspective to have. And I think we get so bogged down in the everyday, I've got to get supper on the table. And you forget that. And I mean, I've seen parents too, empty nesters, when the kids do leave the house, just completely lost. What do I do now without kids to raise? Yeah, it's a big question.
So when we lay our kids at the Messiah's feet, are we actually drawing on a power much greater than ourselves? And the lessons that we learn from his interactions is what we're going to talk about when we come back from break. I've got a 30-year-old daughter, just delivered my first grandbaby. I used to tell her as I was raising her, and I was a single dad for a long time, listen, don't get so upset about that one. I will give you things that are worthy of going to therapy for. So that's not one of them. Save that response to something, because later on I'll give you something that you should write down and you can go talk to a therapist about.
Right.
But this isn't one of them, so just chill.
It's not one of them.
So just chill on that particular issue. We're talking with Patricia Batten, author of Parenting by Faith, What Jesus Said to Parents. Well, when you think back over the parables, when you think back over the interactions, can you recall in your mind and recount his conversation with parents? Not an area that most people can recollect and say, nope. I remember a blind man and a couple of others, but my mind doesn't really jump to a whole long list of stories that we have been taught over the years about how Jesus spoke to parents. So when we return from break, we're going to look at some of those stories and some of his responses and how it should model our response in similar situations. We'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. We're talking with Patricia Batten, author of the new book, Parenting by Faith, What Jesus Said to Parents. It's almost as if there should be exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, because the average person can barely remember the major well-known parables, but what he said to parents is almost, there's certainly gold nuggets there, but you're going to have to dig pretty deep to get them.
Yeah.
So, Pat, welcome back to this segment.
Thanks, Eric.
Let's talk about that. You went on a personal journey.
I did, yeah.
And why?
Well, I have 3 boys, and when my youngest was born, I had a little bit of a difficult time. So we realize now, he's 7 now, we realize now that I probably was suffering from postpartum depression. And I didn't realize that until it was done. It was all done. But it was a tough year. It was a tough year and a half. And at the same time, my older son was having a little bit of trouble as well. Super bright boy, nice boy. But he would often trip at school or in gym class. He would fall. He would always be last when they had to run laps, that kind of thing. And, when you're in 4th grade, that causes some problems. It causes some problems socially. And he ended up that year developing a stutter. And, we had heard it, Rich and I had heard it at home. And it got to the point where there was a game at school in which the kids in the class would count how many times it took him to get out a word. And that was tough hearing that, and we were so proud of him that he told us. But the school year was almost complete, so it had been going on. Now, of course, that hurts a kid. They may say no big deal, but it hurts a kid. It hurts a parent as well. So we really talked about, okay, what do we do here? And I've still got this baby, and there's a middle child too. That forgotten middle child as well. And what we ended up doing the following year was bringing our son to Children's Hospital in Boston, and he was looked at by a surgeon, and we discovered he was not pigeon-toed, as another doctor had told us, but he had femoral anteversion, which meant his hips, his femurs in his hips were not aligned properly, making him look pigeon-toed. But he really had a problem with alignment, and the only way to correct it was through surgery. So later that year, we brought him in and, talked to some other parents who had gone through this, and they broke both of his legs. The surgeons cut both of his legs with a saw. This is how you cut a leg. And they put them into the right position and put him in a wheelchair. He was out of school for 3 months. And this kid was a trooper. I mean, it is major surgery just to get his legs straightened out. And he's a different kid now. I mean, confident, still bright, but it's something that we felt as parents we really needed to do. And what a tough decision. I mean, elect to have surgery. So during that time, and of course there's just the daily grind, that kind of thing, but having this baby, thinking, what is going on with me? Why do I feel upset all the time? And dealing with the surgery and the things that preceded that, I really, cried out to God and said, what do you have to tell me as a parent? Because I really don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel joyful now. I don't know what to do with my son and these legs. I don't know how to deal with bullies. I feel like I've done everything that the world tells me to do. I've talked to teachers and principals and guidance counselors and all of that. But what do you say to me? I feel like I'm falling apart inside, yet on the outside I have to have this strong exterior and still make lunches and shuttle kids around. So I searched the scriptures. I looked through the Gospels. I knew Jesus talked, Jesus welcomed the little children, and that's all I could remember. So I looked through the Gospels, and I found all the passages in which Jesus interacted with parents. And I discovered that he interacted with moms and he interacted with dads. And I love that part too, that he interacted with dads. So often we think of parenting as a female, a mom kind of thing, but it's not. It is both parents. And as you know, in Jesus' culture, fathers really took the lead in teaching, and especially in teaching the Torah. But you've got these moms and these dads, every single one of them in a desperate situation. And I thought, okay, my child is not demon possessed like some of these kids, but these are desperate parents who love their children and are terribly worried about them. And I could relate on that level. So I dug into those passages, and I was surprised by what I found. I was encouraged by what I found. And I really thought, wow, Lord, you talk to me, even as a mom. And it really made me feel good. It made me feel special, too.
In looking at those passages, was there a common theme that you saw, a thread that was really connected the core message of Jesus? Because Paul actually carries forward, it starts much earlier in the Proverbs, but it is the same core message throughout all the passages in conveying the way that parents should interact with their children. What was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, the takeaway, I was a bit surprised. I guess I should have known this. But the book is not a how-to. Jesus does not leave these parents with 10 steps or 5 ways. He works on the life of the parent. And he works with the child too, but they are not the primary people in these passages, not the kids at all. It is the parent. And every time he's saying, do you trust me? Do you trust me with this child that you love more than anything? Do you trust me?
You know, it's interesting. You made a statement about the how-to. The Bible is not a how-to book.
It's a who-to.
Well, it's a who-to and a what-to. It tells us what to do, but it does not tell us how to do it.
So often, I see this in churches. You've got a congregation say, just tell me what to do. Tell me, how do I do this? What steps do I take? It doesn't work that way. And so often what we have to do is help people to think biblically and make those decisions, led by the Spirit, talking to their Father, but get them to think biblically.
When you look at things that we tend to apply in the love narrative, we seem to put it as spousal, not parental. The fruit of the Spirit is adult, not parent to child. The Philippians 4 is to myself, not to someone else. These are things for us to impart, but yet we virtually have hijacked them. They belong to me. They were written to me. As a matter of fact, in my early years of my faith journey, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 became my model for me to measure whether somebody loved me this way. If they don't love me this way, then they don't love me. And I was 44 when I came to faith, so I had a very skewed view of, okay, well, so this is a great test. This is like a great Rorschach or Cooter preference test. If they're not patient with me, well, then they don't love me. If they're not kind, right? And instead of it being the model of how I'm supposed to love, right. The Sermon on the Mount was to be how we were to apply these lessons to our charges, whether or not they were our disciples, which are the Yeladim, the children. Okay, you have two groups: the Talmudim, which are the disciples, and the Yeladim, which are the children. But the Yeladim, the children, are always Talmudim. A child is always a disciple of their parents. Therefore, anything spoken to a disciple is an instruction for a child. That is the concept, that a child is a disciple of their parenting. And so this is a discipleship training. This is parenting by discipleship, by looking at the model that you walk close by. The blessing is, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi, meaning you walk so closely to him that as his feet hit the dust and the dust rises up and the words he speaks rides on the dust and it falls upon you, that you're covered with the dust of your rabbi, the very words he spoke that rode on the wind and then lit upon you. Well, think about how close your children are to you and how much discipleship is being done in the rights and the wrongs and the yeses and the nos and the how-tos and the best ways. And that there's more than one way. And so you chose this way, but what if you had chosen that way? Or let's go revisit this and let's try to have a different outcome. And every parable was that way. Every message and every lesson was that way. And how to go back and provide a way. And I think that one of the most encouraging parts of your book is that it is not too late. Even now, with my 30-year-old daughter and my, let's see, now 22-day-old granddaughter, to apply these lessons. So when you began to realize that there was a parenting model of parenting by faith, that this is now kind of a new genre of parenting. Okay, there was parenting the Dr. Spock way, then there was parenting this way, now there's parenting by faith. You are now in lockstep with the Lord, as you should be in your marriage, as you should be in your doing more with God as opposed to more for God. How does this apply to parenting? Where's the practical application? How do I avoid being the heretical parent in my application of the biblical truth?
Right. I think it goes back to that trusting of Jesus, and every situation was different. You look at the widow of Nain in Luke chapter 7. She is really the one example in the book in which this is a parent who does not cry out for Jesus. The others are desperately searching for him. She does not, because her son is already dead. That's what I believe. What on earth could Jesus do at that point? I mean, he wouldn't be helpful. But there he is. He's walking by. He's got his group of disciples, and he hears the sound of this procession going on. This is a funeral procession. They're heading out of the village to bury this boy, likely in the same tomb. She's walked this path before, where her husband has been laid. The whole community is going back. They gather around her. Everybody's mourning together. And there comes Jesus into the situation in which he is not even invited. And I think as a parent, there are times, this is the application here, in which the grief is so difficult. The mourning is so fresh that we don't even know what to say. We don't even know how to talk to God. And we really believe, even people of faith, believe that this is beyond God. You don't know what my child is into, God. They've gone down this path of of drugs, or they're lost, Lord. I can't get them off the video games, that kind of thing. I have lost my child. But even then, Jesus hears. He hears her sobbing, and he sees it, and he comes. And I think that's so important for parents to know, even when they feel like it is all gone with their children, that no, Jesus hears, Jesus sees, and he comes. So that's one application, but it's trusting that Jesus really is there and that he cares, because we can get to the point as parents where you think, do you even care? Do you even know what's going on? And I think that passage shows us that, oh, he absolutely does. And the word there, there's a Greek word, it's splanchnizomai, and in that word, it describes Jesus' passion and his compassion for this woman. And it's a word of the gut. What he's saying is he feels it in his gut. So to know that, our Lord and Savior, that God is heartbroken over our heartbreak, I think is amazing. He is not this distant God. And I think that's incredibly encouraging to parents.
You write a reference in Luke 7:11 about parenting without tears.
Yes.
Don't cry, don't grieve. This message. What Jesus said to parents, you don't know what you're asking.
Right.
There's several times he spoke to the disciples and said, "Are you so dull?
Yeah.
How long will I put up with you?" We do tend to ask the wrong, either for the wrong motive, as James tells us, or just the wrong question.
Yeah.
Look, there's chaos here. How do I get out of this? And the Lord's answer would be, stop asking.
No.
Stop asking how. Start asking what. What do you get out of this? This is my world too. This is what I see going on. If you were me, what would you be doing now?
Right. Right. And that's exactly what Jesus is doing. He's teaching parents. He is training us. And so often we want to say, get us out of this situation. Like, fix my child, fix this, do this. And he doesn't. And in these passages, yes, he works with the child, but the focus is on the parent and what he does in the life of the parent. And it is not easy. He pushes each parent to the brink, where I think, oh man, I might have walked away, or I would have stomped off mad if he had said that to me. But he's testing faith, and he ultimately is growing these parents' faith. And if we have that larger perspective as parents, rather than get me out of this situation, get my kid out of this situation, yes, we can pray for that, but it's, Lord, what are you doing in my life right now? What are you doing in our lives as a family? How are you growing me? How are you revealing yourself to me? Those are very different questions. And knowing that there is a God who walks beside you through all of this makes all the difference in the world. We're not alone, and he is at work in our lives, no matter what is going on. And when we stop believing that, we can end up very hopeless. But he really works with these parents, and he gives each parent what they need. He doesn't have a cookie cutter answer. It's not the standard response. But he gives them what they need, and I think what they can handle too. But to each one, he really he pushes them. He pushes them.
He's asked, what are the two greatest commands? The first one is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength. And he goes on, knowing that they will finish that, and you shall talk about him when you walk along the way, when you rise up, when you lie down, and when you rise up, when you lie down, to talk to your children about God.
Yeah.
From the beginning. This is a fundamental truth, is to talk about God. And when in Jeremiah, we talk about coming to the crossroads, that when you come to the crossroads, choose the ancient path. I won't know what the ancient path is if my parents haven't taught me about God, if they haven't imparted, and talked to me about it. And that is one of those lessons that is not too late. It's one of those lessons that's not even too hard to go to your child and say, I drifted away from my core values. I drifted away, and you watched it, and I'm sure you sat back thinking, what a hypocrite, and you were right, and I was being hypocritical. But in that admission, in that confession, in that discussion, is the transparency that Jesus is telling us that we cannot play a part. This is not a part. This has to be real.
It's a life, and I think that Deuteronomy 6 is so important, following the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love him. And what parents are doing, as you said, as they're walking, as they're sitting, as they're getting up in the morning, as they're doing everything, is demonstrating love for God, what that looks like. And as parents, we are constantly teaching, whether we know it or not. We think of teaching as a formal kind of thing, but teaching takes place in all kinds of venues. And yeah, what the Bible is saying is that this is a lifestyle of teaching our kids about who God is. And that means for us, saying sorry when we overreact, or when we cross a line, or saying, mommy shouldn't have done that, or she could have responded, in a better way, or she should have reached out that time. But it's this constant, or, look at what God has created today, or thanking God. Yeah, it happens. It's 24/7.
It is true that children will react and respond and be trained by what they see you do, not by what they hear you say. Yeah. And so if you are telling them to read their Bibles and you're not ever reading your Bible in front of them, they're not going to read their Bibles. If they are not if you're not talking to them about the Lord, or talking to each other, you and your husband, in front of them about the Lord, they're not going to learn that model of communication. If you disappear into another room and have these private conversations and then come out, they don't know if they're good, they're bad. They just wonder who's in trouble, and are mommy and daddy going to get are they going to get a divorce? I mean, that's right. Like their go-to. But the truth of the matter is that parenting by faith is actually parenting with faith, and that's the message: is that you can't parent by faith without faith, and you can't parent by faith without a knowledge of what the author of faith says is the way to not to exasperate your child, not to give your child a snake when he asks you for a piece of bread, to train up a child in the way they should go, to lift them up, to encourage them, to be the welcoming example of parenthood, not just fatherhood, but parenthood, in them understanding relationship and that God is love, and by being this beautiful application of the love lessons that Jesus brought to us. We've been talking with Patricia Batten, B-A-T-T-E-N, Parenting by Faith, What Jesus Said to Parents. A journey that very few of us, if any, have actually gone down this path that Patricia is taking us on, to find out what Jesus had to say to moms and dads about parenting and about their response to circumstance, and our children are responding to circumstance, and we don't know how to help them. In this book, you're going to find a way, and the way is the same way as the one who says that I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life, and that no one comes to the Father but through me. Then why aren't we taking our instruction about parenting from him, since he gives it so freely? And that's the challenge in this book, and I'm asking you to rise up to the challenge. Get it, read it, apply it, and see what changes will take place in your life. Patricia Batten, thank you for sharing this with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thanks, Eric.
God bless. We're going to take a short break,
God bless you.
and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.